My sentence on this, determining, based on your history and your patterns, shall be
He's on the way now, sir.
very well.
Booby ass oaf.
Inside.
From what I understand, they both waived their right to
I know,
carry.
even though you're the one in shackles.
All right.
Excuse me. All right.
All rise. The Governor of Francis Devon is now proceeding.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bjornson. All right. Let me just begin from the beginning once more. My name is Francis Devine, and court is now in session. All right. Before me, there's a defendant, but I will be going over all the procedures to make sure that there is law and order maintained in this courtroom at all times. Now, I have 15 years on the Third Circuit Court of Virginia, and I am well qualified to preside in the state in the absence of a judge. This is a court of law, and proper respect and tact will be required from all in attendance. This is not your trial. This is Mr. Zoski's trial. Audience is all ordered to keep their voices to a whisper and to not to distract the parties involved. Failure to follow courtroom decorum may lead to contempt of court with jail time and fines. Now, Mr. Bailiff here, Mr. Bjornson, will make sure that you are all in accordance to the court decorum. All right. Now to begin, Mr. Deputy JJ will be prosecuting on behalf of the people of New Alexandria in the case of New Alexandria versus Edward Zoski. Now, Mr. Jeremiah Jackson, will you please present the charges to the court that the defendant will be facing?
Mr. Zoski's looking at 4 times first-degree murder, 1 times aggravated assault, 4 times aggravated obstruction of justice, 4 times aggravated disturbing, resulting in a fine of $11,400.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jeremiah Jackson. Mr. Jackson, we will get to the fine if the defendant is found guilty at the end of it during sentencing. That is if. However, here in New Alexandria, there's a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. All right, Mr. Edward Zoski. Is that you, Mr. Edward Zoski, in front of me?
Yes, it is.
All right. Now, you've heard the charges from the state. How do you plead to these charges?
Not guilty at all.
Very well, Mrs. Zoski. We'll be moving on to opening statements. Now, could the state or Mr. Jeremiah Jackson please present a brief, at least opening statement why you think this gentleman is guilty?
Well, basically, Mr. Zoski, his mind friend Jimmy admitted to 4 times, all 4 that we had previously already found out that he was guilty of while we were interrogating him. I mean, he made it pretty easy on us, and then decided to afterwards threaten our lives. And I'll say, Mr. Zoski was he murdered people of town with bows, with knives, and he's a danger to them.
All right, is that it, Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, not a problem. There'll be more opportunity to speak as we continue. Now, Mr. Zoski, it is your opportunity for your opening statement. How do you stand?
I stand dumbfounded. I mean, I did not kill anybody whatsoever. And this Jimmy person that they're talking about, I've never heard of Jimmy in my entire life. This is a product of a corrupt and tarnished justice system that the law enforcement has. I'm at a loss for words. I'm shocked that these crimes are being pinned on me I said I'm not guilty, and I'm not guilty at all. I did not kill anybody. That's all I got to say for now, unless evidence is provided.
Very well. All right, thank you for your opening statement. Now, Mr. Jackson, it is your opportunity to call your first witness.
All right. How about we start with Sarah?
Miss Connor? Thank you, Miss Connor. You just stand right there. Otherwise, will you raise both your hands and repeat after me?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God above?
Yes, sir, I do.
Very well. You have been sworn in. Here is your witness, Mr. Jackson.
I just said, all right. I just fixed my. I guess I got a raspy throat.
Very well. That's fine, Mr. Jackson. She is your witness.
Yes, that's right. She's my.
You can ask her questions.
Well, Sarah, you had a talk with this fella, Edward Zoski, as well as his fella Jimmy.
Yes, I have.
And would you go as far as to say that Mr. Zoski and Jimmy might be the same person?
Speak up, Miss Connor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everyone uses outside voices when they're addressing the court, but she said yes.
And did you see when he presented his knife, it was fully covered in blood from the murder that he committed just before he got caught?
Yes.
Did you see him outside of town trying to track a killed old fella to bury him outside of town rather than take him to the doctor and possibly get him healed?
Yes, I did.
Did he at any point threaten you while he was in?
Yes, he did.
Did he at any point try to bribe you while you were in the cell? While he was in?
Yes, he did.
All right. Did Mr. Zoski or Jimmy confirm that they had several victims other than the 4 that we caught him?
Yes, he did.
That's all you.
Very well, Mr. Jackson. I appreciate that. Mrs. Zoski, as the defense and yourself representing in this case, you may ask the deputy some questions.
Okay, Deputy. Kana, is it?
Correct.
Alright. So, did you guys ask me where my jacket was?
I did not personally. I cannot speak on the other deputies.
Okay, who asked? Was it you, Jack?
I did.
Okay. Alright, so, where did you guys find this jacket?
I found it down by the stables like you.
Okay. Now, you know for a fact that this is my jacket. It couldn't have been anybody else's. Any other people of this town.
It could have been, but it's very coincidental that you tell us exactly where it is, and then we find it, and then it matches the description of what we had.
Well, being that, I'm not gonna defend myself on that one. Alright.
Is that all the questions that you have, Miss Connor?
I believe so.
Very well, not
The
a
defense
problem.
is pretty strong.
All right, Mr. JJ, is your opportunity to redirect questions towards Miss Connor.
I don't believe I have much other questions I need answered.
All right, very well. I will submit on behalf of the state, since it has been public record, We'll be reading off, and this will take just a minute because I want to make sure that everyone's clear about what the case is. And I must have skipped over this part a little bit earlier. However, just so we're all on the same page. The criminal complaint, as written by the lawman, Mr. Zoski, and Jimmy first murdered a hoe in front of the doctor's office in Valentine using a bow and arrow from the roof of the Yellow Law building. Afterwards, a body was recovered from behind the saloon. Unknown if death occurred before or after the previous incident. The fella had his throat slit. While we were patrolling the city for Mr. Zoski, I spotted him behind some buildings trying to mingle with a group of locals. After they got angered, he runs off into the saloon where he fires a shot and kills a third individual. At this incident, he was wearing a hat and some other clothes, which is why he wasn't necessarily the suspect we were looking for from earlier. He is then apprehended in Valentine a while later, while Deputy Marshal Penn, who drew his gun on him before getting tackled to the ground. After a thorough talk with Mr. Zoski, we managed to gather enough knowledge to pin 3 of the murders from the previous incidents on him, but he eventually confessed to all 4. While in the cell, he also attempted to bribe and threaten with death upon several deputies. On top of that, he admitted to having murdered several more individuals in the past. Now, I probably should have led the trial off of that, but now we've covered that detail. Just give a kind of more of a forward story. All right, Miss Deputy, the court has a couple questions for you. What was your involvement more than what Mr. Jackson has kind of put on in this scenario?
I was there to give my hand with my other fellow deputies. I also helped them arrange all charges to make sure he stayed safe in the cell with all the threats that were happening.
All right,
I was there also to question.
So you, under oath, do declare by the statement that is the truthful.
Yes, sir.
All right. Mrs. Zoski, is there any further questions you wish to redirect at her or recross?
Yes, I do have a couple questions.
Very well.
Okay. First of all, you guys claim that I shot somebody with a bow, an arrow, a whore in front of the doctor's office, was it?
That is correct.
Okay. Did any of you or your deputies see me commit this crime?
I did not see that firsthand. Another deputy did.
Okay. What was that deputy's name?
That be Mr.
Okay.
Mr.
Deputy Penn.
Penn, thank you.
Deputy Penn. Is Deputy Penn present in the court?
No, but I was also there to...
Okay, so you physically saw me pull back this bow of origin.
Just one moment. I will be probably calling Mr. Jeremiah Jackson to the stand as well. That way you can question him under oath.
But
just keep the questions directed towards Miss Connor. She would have the knowledge of.
Did you see me directly pull this bow back and shoot this poor whore in the neck, the head, the chest?
Personally, I did not.
Okay. Alrighty. And as far as the stab victim in back of, where was it?
The saloon.
The saloon. Okay. Did you see me stab anybody in back of the saloon, or was the body just found that way?
Personally, I did not.
Okay. And lastly, did you see me, or anybody for that matter, shoot a man in this saloon?
Personally, I did not.
Okay, and to the best of your knowledge, was anybody found inside the saloon at the scene of this crime when that was committed? Was anybody found inside?
I was patrolling the north side of Valentine looking for you as well at that time.
And was I anywhere to be seen?
As I already testified before, whenever I found you, you were carrying a body outside of Valentine into the field to be buried.
Okay, and do you know the circumstances of that man's demise?
From what your statement was,
Okay, what was my statement?
it was a simple bar fight and you were helping him sleep it off.
Okay,
But the man was dead.
it was a bar fight, you say I said?
Correct.
When I, in fact, said that I got into a disagreement with the man.
In the saloon.
And it was self-defense. I never mentioned the saloon. See, Your
Yes.
Honor, this is a clear
You did.
example of the deputy's misinformation. That this case is not properly being handled.
Your Honor, if I could elaborate on that question.
Yeah, of course.
When we found you walking with a body, it was a body, he was clearly dead. You said that you just came from the saloon with an altercation with a gentleman and you were just going to help him sleep it off in the field. However, it was visible that the man was dead.
Oh, I did not say any such thing of sleeping it off in the field. I knew at that point in time that the man had died from the injuries he experienced from my beating after he tried killing me. It was purely a self-defense. But that is all I have for questions for Deputy Connor, was it? Yes, Connor. That is all the questions I have for her.
Very well. Mr. Jackson, would you like to redirect her, Miss Connor?
Stand back, sir.
I just need to hear you, that's all.
Mr. Jackson, is there any further questions for redirect, Mr. Connor?
I believe we heard out there that he was going to bury the fella outside of town when we asked what was going on.
The questions are from Miss Connor. She's on the stand right now.
Yeah, that's the question for her. That's what we heard when we was out the city estate.
When I spoke to him again, he said to sleep it off.
All right, I was about to say, is that true of what you overheard? Now I have a couple questions for Miss Connor as well. When
Yes,
it
sir.
comes to the knife, how was that presented to yourself, and in what context?
It was presented to me as evidence with him already being incapacitated in the cell.
What was the state of the knife?
It was bloody.
What was the defendant present during the handling of the knife?
He was... I don't know if it was him or not, honestly. Like I said, sir, he seems to have two different personalities, and it's hard to keep up with him.
Two different personalities, you say. Now I see here in a few different places it refers to a Jimmy. Can you elaborate on who a Jimmy is? Or?
Yes, sir. He, the defendant, told us that Jimmy is his best friend that he met in Strawberry after he hit his head in an accident, and Jimmy helped get him back to health and has been his best friend ever since.
Now, have you met Mr. Jimmy?
I believe I have.
Now, is Mr. Jimmy a person?
Mr. Jimmy is also the defendant, from what I believe, from what I witnessed.
What would lead you to draw that kind of conclusion?
He has two different personalities, sir. One is more of a calm demeanor. The other one is a more vengeful, a more angered person. And when he switches back and forth between the two, he has no recollection or memory of ever doing so.
Very well. Have you had experiences of him switching back and forth in this case, and as you stated?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you explain just a little briefly what those circumstances were?
When he's in the cell, when I question him, one moment he'll be calm, as well as calm as he can be like he is now. He'll answer our questions directly for the most part. However, when he switches, that's when he threatened to kill me. He tried to bribe me, as well as another deputy. And then he'll go quiet again for a little bit. He'll start asking about Jimmy. It's just two very extreme different sides to him, I guess I could say.
Very well. Thank you for that. And Mr. Jeremiah Jackson, is there anything else you wish to direct examine on her?
I don't believe so.
Mr. Zoski, is there anything you wish to cross-examine from her?
No, that I rest for now.
Very well. All right, now when it comes to the victims, Miss Connor, it says here that there's been at least 4 of them. Can you say without a shadow of a doubt that there was at least 4, and that you can say as confidently under God that Mr. Zoski, was the person who perpetrated these crimes?
Yes, Your Honor. Not only the 4 in town he finally admitted to, afterwards he also admitted that there was plenty of more that he never got caught for, and he laughed.
Very well. All right, I believe that's all the question I would have for yourself as well. However, we'll retain you just in case we have to call you back up on the stand.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if I may, real quick. Not to do with Miss Connor, but to do with myself.
What is it?
I feel a little dehumanized in these shackles here. I mean, do you mind if I represent myself fully as a free man here, presumed under innocence?
You are being accused of plenty of heinous crimes.
Which I have already demonstrated that this case is accusations.
Anything further on that end, that will be a no at this time, just because of the charges themselves being the predetermined factor, and that would go for anyone who's facing these charges, even if they get acquitted. All right. Trust me, 15 years on the circuit, I've learned my lessons. Anyway, Mr. JJ.
15 years in a posh-ass house.
Mr. JJ,
Yes.
you stated that you were present, however, there's no one to question you, so if you would like to take the stand, I will put you under oath and ask you a few questions. That way the defendant has the opportunity to cross-examine you. All right. Deputy Jeremiah Jackson, will you raise both hands? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help a God Almighty? Can you give a brief statement of what you saw during the circumstances of that night or that day?
All right. Well, the first thing I saw was I was standing out there on the front porch of the sheriff's office with a deputy and I believe one other local. And I was going into the doctor's office to check on a fella that had hit his head or something. And when I came out, Mr. Penn was over a dead body of a hall out there that had been shot with an arrow from a roof. While I was in the dock, we went to the rooftop to check it out. We found the bow left up on top of the yellow log. Right after this, another deputy found a body behind the saloon with its throat. We took the fella back to the doctor to see if there was anything we could do. I believe he succumbed to his injury. We started patrolling the area for the suspect, and more of the deputies came around from patrols to help look. And while we would, I believe it was Miss Connor, Mr. and I were out over there by the tents over there, where he came carrying with and there was the incident we spoke of where he had murdered the fella and wanted to take him out of town to bury him rather than get him checked out by the doctor. So, perhaps just let his family know what the hell had happened. Just common courtesy. After we kept a lookout, and when I did see him again, he was trying to mingle with some locals back there behind the log. And essentially I followed him, and he angered the locals over there that he was mingling, and he ran off into the saloon. We heard while he came running through, he murdered a fella in here. We came in right after him as he ran out. Fella was shot dead. He on the floor. That was his last. He was apprehended shortly after by deputy.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Another question for you. The individual that was seen running outside the saloon, would you be able to identify him?
The
The person you chased out of the saloon after following the gunshot.
Oh yeah, that's Mr. Sa.
Can you point him out for the record?
He's right there.
All right. Show for the record under oath. He's pointed out to the defendant. All right. Mr. Zoski, you have the opportunity to cross-examine this witness.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Again, Mr. What was it, Jackson? Jackson, yeah. So, I'm just gonna reiterate myself. I'm gonna ask the same questions I asked Connor here. Did you see me shoot that lady? Did you physically see me shoot her with that arrow?
I did not see you shoot her with the arrow. I did see
Okay.
her get shot by an arrow, and
Could
you
it
confessed too late.
have been any other person in this town? I mean, is anybody else capable of that?
I suppose so, but with the evidence you gave us, you
No,
told
that's
us
all. That's
in.
all. So, my next question.
Please at least let the witness answer the question fully.
You
Proceed.
presented evidence while you were in the cell saying that Jimmy or your other personality, I suppose, was an expert hunter, and I asked if he was a hunter, what weapon would he with? You said bow or he, and then I asked how would he take an animal? Does he like hunting?
Why you doing this?
Jimmy said I like it.
Just before we continue, I will have that man right there of contempt of court for at least 30 months. All right, that's
Your
what you,
Honor.
that's what you get for distracting my courtroom proceedings. All right, continue, Mr. Jeremiah.
Holy shit!
And I asked him if he would hunt animals big game, how would he hunt them? And he stated that he would have a hive ant. So everything he said hinted toward him having done. And we did not have anything on him, but he subtly admitted to it. And then later on, he fully admitted.
You
That
say-
is all on that.
You say I fully admitted. What did I say? When I fully admitted, or apparently fully admitted.
You said that you did murder the whore with a bow and arrow. You shot her from the roof, you shot her, and you said you'd done it to many folks before.
That seems awfully convenient for you to just charge somebody like that, don't you think? Somebody to just up and admit to a crime. Awfully convenient.
You made it very convenient for it.
Apparently I did. So, my next is out here behind the saloon. There was a murdered individual.
Time to bed you down!
So, my next is out here behind. There goes the old knocking him over.
Long trail for you!
Oh, Lord.
Jesus Christ.
Go ahead and take care of the ones that were causing trouble. That will be contempt of court again for the two individuals. If you survive, that is. Let this be a lesson for anyone that disturbs the court.
Gonna be dead soon, partner!
All right, continue.
Alright, this
Okay, I'm good to continue. What was that, Mr. Jackson?
I wanna see you die!
the second victim, we did not see you do. And you admitted to that one as well after we had taken your knife. We had
Oh, I was
confiscated
lucky.
your weapons when we put you. We inspected the weapon, and it was covered. And that was suspicion in itself, but it could have been animal blood, to be fair. But then you went and admitted to that one.
So it could have been animal blood
It could have been, but
from
you
my
admitted
hunting
to it not
background,
be. Correct.
which I expressed many times that I do partake in hunting animals. I did say that, yes.
Correct, but doesn't change the fact that you admitted to murdering him.
So, just so I can address here, when I admitted, I was under serious duress. All right, I was partially in fear for my life from your deputies. I had just seen you in the way that you act. You follow people in the dark, not announcing yourselves. It made me feel very uncomfortable and feel that I had
You were
to.
caught. Sir, you were caught in a lot of.
Alright, I failed to see how that was a question, more of a statement, however it has been noted. Is there any further questions for the deputy?
No, yeah, you know, one more. Like I said, you did not see me shoot anybody or inflict harm on anybody, did you? At any point in time?
Oh, I did. I did see you shoot the fella in the saloon. We was running right.
You saw me physically pull the trigger and shoot that man. Where did I shoot him?
You shot him right over.
Okay, but upon examining the body, where did the shot land?
I believe it landed in his
In his what, sorry?
chest.
In his chest. You believe or you know?
I do not know because I did not examine the body. I was running after you. And
Okay, and did you find me anywhere in the area?
no, you managed to escape through the back.
I escaped through the back, so the doors were open. Oh well, there was a rush of people outside. I assumed that the doors were open. And then Deputy Kana said that she was it north of the saloon, so that would make it out back here. So
She was around over there by the sheriff's office mode.
okay, and as she said, she did not see anybody run out the back or see anybody in the immediate vicinity.
No, I believe that was me, Mr. Penn, and possibly Bjorn if he.
So it could have been somebody else that shot that man over here.
I don't believe.
You don't believe so?
I followed you.
Could it have been somebody else?
Unlike.
Unlikely. I'm just looking for a simple yes or no answer. Could it have somebody? Could it have been somebody else?
No.
No, it couldn't have. Why is that?
Because you were the only one running here, and all the other folks were running out.
So you're saying that it's not possible for anybody to have a negative reaction with the townfolk, in that, you know, shootings don't happen commonly.
Oh, it's possible, but why would someone just
Okay,
shoot
so it's
you
possible.
when you came in? It's possible that locals could agitate.
Okay, so that makes it possible that somebody else could have shot that poor man.
No, because we saw you running here.
Okay, so you saw me run in here, but you did not see me shoot anybody. You did not physically see with your own eyes that I shot somebody.
I did. I was right out there on the street. I looked at you while you was mingling behind the buildings, and at some point you agitated too much, and they started threatening you.
Okay, because
You ran off. You ran off instead of fighting them, and you
Because I
ran right
recall
in here.
you were over there, not. Never mind, I rest my case.
I was right in there between those buildings over.
Very well. I do appreciate the testimony and the questions. Now, just for clarification, there was at least one body inside the saloon and one body outside the saloon. Do I understand that correctly?
Correct. That's separate.
All right, and then of course the alleged whore that was shot with an arrow.
Correct.
Where does the fourth body come into play?
The fourth body was the one he was carrying outside of town with Miss Connor as well.
Oh,
All right. Now, Miss Cotter has mentioned a couple briefly about the state of mind of this alleged Jimmy and Mr. Zoski. Can you at least comment on that? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I was there while we was interrogating him the whole time, and my statement's gonna be pretty much the same as hers. Jimmy, when he switches in, he becomes a much more aggressive and murderous. He seems to enjoy talking about killing folks, hunting people, hurting people, threatening people, trying to bribe our just an overall nasty. And I seen him switch back and forth like that. When we was transporting him as well, he was Jimmy the whole time, 'cause I figure whenever he gets agitated too much or gets too, he just goes into Jimmy.
Very well. Now, what was it saying during the transport then?
He was just being hostile the whole. I don't remember any specific statements other than calling Mr. Deputy Bjorn an oath several times.
All right. Well, what happened after he was in custody doesn't really have any bounds on what happened that he's allegedly done. I just want to get a little bit of better state of mind that this individual may have.
Right.
All right. Now, Mr. Zoski, is there anything further when it comes to cross-examining from Mr. Jackson?
I have no further questions for Mr. Jackson.
I do not have anything further myself either. Mr. Jackson, thank you for your testimony. You may step down and continue as prosecution. All right, Mr. Jackson, is your opportunity to call your next witness?
I don't believe I have another witness.
Very well.
Huh.
I do appreciate
Mr.
that.
Penn would be my other choice, but he ain't around right now. Unless Bjorn's seen enough that he could probably. I don't
Beyond
want to
the
put
oath.
him up there
Yeah.
because he did not see a lot other than the
check it out.
transportation and.
Very well, then. All right. I would assume that the state rests the case at this time. All right. They have rested the case. Now, Mr. Zoski, you have the
Yes.
opportunity to call any kind of witnesses on your behalf for your defense.
Well, seeing as how I'm new to these parts, I don't really have many friends. There were no, per se, witnesses to any kind of crime that I apparently committed. So I don't have the opportunity to call witnesses because I have little to no defense here. I mean, this case is purely circumstantial. Nobody directly saw me commit any sort of crime. He says he does, but
All right,
he can't.
we'll get to those type of matters about narration, about your closing arguments. So we're focusing on witnesses right now.
All right then.
All right, no witnesses. Well, I believe that would be time for the state, the prosecution, to give their closing arguments.
I just want to add on top that when we did find him again after the fourth incident and he came, Mr. Penn saw him over there at the same spot that I chased him into the saloon. And he pulled a gun on Mr. Penn, but Mr. Penn already had his lasso out. So he managed to tackle him to the ground first, even though Mr. Zoski attempted to possibly take down a deputy. And that would be the aggravated assault.
Very well, I do appreciate that. Mr. Zoski, it is your opportunity for your closing arguments.
Well, as I've already stated, I don't have a defense here. I mean, it's painfully obvious. I have no sort of witnesses. I don't have any basis of defense because what these guys are saying, it's all so conveniently laid out for them. I just happen to admit what I did. And although none of them saw anything, even Mr. Jackson himself said that he did not observe the body, so he does not know the cause of death immediately to himself. He does not know it. As for the stabbing victim outside here, they would know. Sorry, they would not know. They should know that I was nowhere to be found in the area of this crime, and they did not see me shoot anybody with a bow from up on top of the yellow building, you guys said?
It wasn't the criminal complaint, it was the yellow building.
Okay. So nobody saw me do anything. So I'm purely circumstantial evidence here. I mean, there is nothing immediately pinning me to this crime. As far as the knife covered in blood, as I already stated, I am an avid hunter. Alright? I skin animals almost daily. There is no reason why my knife shouldn't be covered in blood. As for the death threats, I've never seen such evidence pulled out of one's ass before, but
Mr.
that should speak
Zoski,
for itself.
I would
What?
hope that you use your proper language. This is the last bastion of civility in these wild parts.
You call this civil?
This is civil. Of course it is, sir.
No. You sit behind a desk all day, posh as hell, drinking what, fine wine?
I do not believe that you will have any kind of room to stand on arguing with a man deciding your fate. Number one.
Deciding
Number two.
my fate. What kind of bullshit whack house is this?
That if you continue down this route there, sir, you
I
will
should've
get
slit your
contempt of
fucking
court.
throat, too.
What do you,
And
Mr.
yours.
Mister? If you continue on this path, you will be found in contempt of court for disrespect to the courtroom.
Go ahead, hold me in contempt. You oaf, you keep on getting in my face. Get
Oh.
out of here.
Take him into custody. Make sure he's bound.
Hang him, I say, hang him! Take that son of a bitch!
All right. Now, I was about to
This is
afford
a
more
monkey house.
opportunity to speak. However, if you're going to be speaking like that in my courtroom, and I will have you know very much that I'm taken away from my family and my other duties in Saint Denis to come out here in Valentine, where people have been causing a ruckus to give you your constitutionally protected right to due process. So I do not respect that kind of behavior in my courtroom. All right.
Stop struggling, yeah, you can't get out of those.
Mr. Zoski, I believe that the closing arguments are finished. I will be
I should have
taking
given you a necktie, you and your family.
Mr. Zoski. Y'all are making your case
He's a
worse for you.
goddamn danger to society.
No.
I shouldn't have
All right.
stopped at that one hole. I should have slumped the ball. Fuck.
All right. All this is on record. However, we are going into recess to deliberate depending on these notes. Now, I will be in recess for about 5 minutes. Y'all are free to mingle, to chat, however, keep your voices to a whisper, not to distract myself as I think really hard about this case. Court is now in recess.
Me and you go around. Come on.
I don't mean to be a bother or anything, but I'm going to be using the outhouse for a couple minutes, so I just don't want to see. I do my best to keep the door closed, but apparently there is no door.
Yes, red.
We watching the governor take a shit. Yeah, it's part of the admission fee.
Oh, Lord, you
Yeah, which I didn't get from
gentleman.
you, so I'm gonna need another $30 from you. State ID 43.
I was just going over my notes, all right?
No,
for there, Governor.
sitting governor.
That what they call it?
I'm glad I can turn back around now. I didn't want to accidentally see something I shouldn't have done.
Oh, I wanted to see it.
All right. Well, I've came to my conclusion, so if we could all
Jesus.
gather back inside,
That's not
get
good
everything
for
going
him.
on, it'd be just fine.
Governor Francis Devine is proceeding.
Governor, my ass.
Thank you, Mr. Bjornson. Do appreciate that. You may be seated, otherwise you may just remain comfortable, however you wish.
Another word and you're going to be gagged.
I will make that statement. If he continues on saying that, I will be deciding whether he gets gagged or not.
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Zoski, you have been standing trial in front of myself. Obviously, y'all have waived the jury trial. So this decision has been made as my decision alone, as an unbiased third-party arbitrator to find the justice of what happened, and the truth, and the facts. Now, the deputies did put out a very good narration of what happened during the formal criminal complaint, and furthermore, the testimony has lined up with the formal complaint. The due constitutional right to cross-examine the witnesses has been observed at this time. However, I do not appreciate you calling me a lazy bureaucrat, when obviously that is not the truth, because if it is the truth, I wouldn't be here right now deciding your fate. Alright, now to get to the charges, I will be finding, I'll go through them one at a time, and we'll start off with the not guilty charges, the acquittals. There's been 4 times aggravated obstruction of justice. I found that there wasn't too much testimony based on everything about the obstruction of justice besides maybe 1 or 2 cases while you were in custody. So you will be found not guilty on 3 of those charges. However, you will be found guilty on 1 of those charges. So 1 count of obstruction of justice aggravated. Get moving on. The aggravated assault. There's been testimony under oath before God and before the Almighty Creator that you assaulted a deputy during the testimonies. The part of aggravated being that they are part of the law and were in official capacity and doing their duties during this. So that will be guilty. Now, when it comes to the 4 times first-degree murders, will be finding you not guilty on 1 of them. The one that you would be not found not guilty upon is going to be the one where he was accused of a bow and arrow from across the street that ended up being a victim of a whore. Unfortunately, there was not enough evidence. However, we do believe it almost met the threshold of a shadow of a doubt on that one. It's most likely that you were the perpetrator, given the statements and your patterns of behavior in the city. However, that one will be found not guilty, but you will be found guilty for the other 3. The instance that happened inside the saloon, where the deputies saw you running away, and also in combination with the confessions while in custody. You'll also be found guilty of the stabbing that happened behind the saloon, as you admitted it and you had the evidence of the knife in your hand. There may have been a slight reasonable doubt on that one, but it's not even a shadow of a reasonable doubt. Too much overwhelming evidence linking you to the crime there, son. Other than that... Oh, actually, no, I did not address the other one. There will be 2 times guilty of the murders. 2 times not guilty. The other case would be in self-defense when you were transporting the body, the person who you allegedly got into a fight with and knocked out, to the graveyard, as Miss Connors during the testimony stated. That one will be not guilty as well. However, the 2 incidences at the saloon shall be guilty. Now, typically, with these charges, it would be quite a substantial fine. quite a substantial time in prison. However, yours is a serious case. Obviously, your outburst here needs to be taken into consideration when it comes to sentencing. Now, you had a good case. A very good case all the way up till the end when you started accusing this court of being a sham, which I do not take kindly to. We have these courtrooms so the law and the government is protected, and that you, as civilians, are protected from the law in the overreach of the law. That's what makes these great states so goddamn great. My sentence on this is determining, based on your history and your patterns and your mental capacities and the history of crimes that you have been on record of committing before this atrocity, shall be death.
Oh, shit.
This is a circus court.
Now, Mr. Bjornson, do we have the ropes ready at the gallows, or has the integrity of those been in question lately?
I believe the gallows are not ready yet. Your Honor.
All right. Looks like the gallows will not be for you, but you will be executed by firing squad.
Oh, shit.
Court is now adjourned. Now, if everyone could meet us at the gallows, that will be where the execution will be taking place.
Be killed. He is ill. He is sick. He needs help.
Do it,
This
Sarah.
punishment does not fit the crime.
Do it, Sarah. Ain't no one gonna help him.
All right.
You still don't understand, do you?
If I could have everyone's attention, I will be directing this.
Doesn't he
All
get
right.
some last words?
As I said, could I have everyone's attention under the...
Say for yourself.
You are lucky we are not in the courtroom, and I would issue contempt of court if you keep on interrupting me.
Yep.
All right, I will be...
Sorry, my horse.
That's
Sorry.
what you fucking get.
If I could have everyone's attention... Now, we are not in court, so obviously I cannot enforce any contempt of court. However, if you do interrupt me, I will be making sure you will get disturbing the peace or a failure to obey a lawful order. All right. This man has been convicted duly after a trial in front of God Almighty as witness, and he has been sentenced based on the evidence presented against him of first-degree murder. 2 times. Also, he has a history in this city, in this state, of doing other horrendous crimes of which he will not have a second chance of forgiving. Unfortunately, God puts people on this earth to instill laws and order. There are 5 different pillars of justice, one of them being retribution for the crimes committed. Retribution for the 2 murders that happened at the hands of this gentleman, Mr. Zoski. Another pillar of justice is public knowing what the outcome of any kind of behavior is, and knowing the results, that if you pursue the same actions as the individuals in the eyes of the Lord and found guilty, this will be the punishment. Now, Mr. Zoski, these are your opportunity before the God Almighty and between the people of Valentine of your last words.
Well, let it be known that this court system is a sham. This governor or justice that was appointed is holding nothing more than a gavel, and this court is just a circus. You people should know that. Well, who am I kidding? I'm dying anyways. I killed those people.
Well, there
I
it is.
mean, if he's honest.
This
Kill him,
dumbass.
Do it.
This dumbass.
Mr. Zoski, I pray that you will rest in peace. However, the likes of you will most likely be judged by God himself and delivered to the coldest and the hottest, whichever's worse, depths of hell.
Yeah, and I hope you put down the sweets.
Very well. Deputy Marshals, on the count of 3. 1, 2.
There is no reason to be doing any of this. You do not have to shoot.
3.
Let it be two.
May God have mercy on your soul.
May God have mercy on your soul. Now, I do appreciate everyone for being in attendance to this. As you saw, they had waived the right to do a jury trial, and this was the outcome of the trial. Everyone knows that these lawless lands are being made lawful again to protect you, the constituents, to protect your people, the protection of property, the protection of prosperity, as this is the land of opportunity, progress, and prosperity. Now, I'll let the deputies arrange any kind of funeral and burial. I'll allow the deputies to arrange any kind of funeral and burial and last words for this individual. He is a human. He deserves a proper burial, as we all do.